As a reporter, I've traveled the Middle East for many years. It's an area that has always fascinated me, but in my work, I've mainly covered its war zones, its crises, and its tragedies. This journey, which takes me down the Silk Road in the footsteps of Marco Polo, gives me the opportunity of exploring the great historical and cultural significance of this part of the world, its ancient melting pot of peoples and civilizations that have contributed so much to our own. A fast train connects Samarkand to the Uzbek capital, Tashkent. Its name means stone village, but with a population today of 2.4 million people, the little village has certainly come a long way. Throughout the centuries, the big cities on the Silk Road were constantly being ransacked by invaders. Some fared better than others. Tashkent, for example, which chose to cooperate with the Russians when they arrived in Central Asia in the 19th century, and later became the Soviets' fourth biggest city. Today, the Uzbek capital serves as the nerve center for the entire region. As the Russian Empire began to recede after 1990, it left behind the vestiges of the very particular kind of urban design that can be found throughout all of the former Soviet socialist republics. Behind the great Tilya Sheikh Mosque is the area known as Old Tashkent. This is where those who refuse to move into the buildings built by the government continue to live. It's here in Old Tashkent that one sees practically the only veiled women in the country. But in these back streets, what is striking is once again the mixture of faces. Children who are dark or blonde, or with almond-shaped eyes. They betray many centuries of ethnic intermixing. In fact, there aren't many conservative Muslim families such as these in Uzbekistan, where the regime uses heavy-handed tactics to severely contain any Islamist fervor of the kind that rages just to the south in Afghanistan. Just a stone's throw from the old Tashkent of veiled women and plaster houses is the big, brand-new bazaar of Korsu, where you can see Uzbek women like these in Western-style dress with their hair uncovered, which is the norm in this country rather than the exception. Little clues here and there in the market reveal the sources of the different culinary traditions and the predominant influence of certain cultures. You can tell we're in Asia here. There are 14 different types of rice. And of course, here are the spices. Ah, yes, from Samarkand?
Rahmat.
It's tea mixed with saffron and cardamom. How much is it? 18. 18,000 som? Oh no, a little less.
I usually sell it at 20, but I'm giving you a special price.
15,000. That's a good price, right? So, 15,000 som. Som is the old Sogdian word for money. It's also the name of the national currency here. And even today, it's still used to mean cash or dough on a large part of the Silk Road, as far as Kashgar in China. Thank you.
Rahmat, Rahmat. Merci.
Thank you.
Francia.
Thank you.
No. In French, it's merci.
Merci.
Спасибо.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, спасибо большое.
Raspberries, blackberries. I'd like to do that job, sorting raspberries, except that I go bankrupt because I'd eat all the stock up. Tashkent is often described as the big metropolis of Central Asia, and in particular because of its very vibrant cultural scene. painter Fayzullah Aghmadaliev, one of the most famous artists in the Uzbek capital, exemplifies this sort of cultivated cosmopolitanism, which combines influences from the East and the West. The old painter has his own studio, lent to him by the city, at the top of one of these Soviet high-rises, in which the elevator only works every now and again. Fayzullah's work is deeply influenced by Uzbek folklore and traditions. In other words, this means that much of its inspiration comes from the history of the Silk Road. Are you drawing a specific scene, or is it imaginary?
No, it comes from my imagination.
So it's a meeting between three wandering Sufi mystics in a caravanserai somewhere near Bukhara on the Silk Road.
There is a reason, in fact, why I'm interested in these three wandering Sufi figures. One of the greatest painters in the Sufi world is Ahmed Yasavi. He was born and grew up in my village. The mausoleums of Ahmed Yasavi's parents are in my village. And as a boy, I used to play in them with my friends. It's an important place from my childhood, and now I'm drawing energy from it.
So do you feel that you're a European artist or an Asian artist?
You know what? As a painter, you must be yourself. I try not to look at the art of European painters too much. Claude Monet, Renoir, for example, are some of my favorite painters. I like French painters in general. But if I look at them too often, they can influence me, and I'm very afraid of that. I can use a European approach in my work, but we mustn't forget that we're in Asia.
In addition to being the commercial hub of Central Asia, Tashkent is, as we said, an artistic and intellectual city, a city that embraces culture in all of its forms, including cooking. The fruit and spices in the bazaar find their way into a variety of dishes that are the pride and joy of the Uzbeks. What we call fusion cuisine is, in this part of the world, more than just the latest culinary trend. Natalia Musina is a businesswoman who owns one of the best restaurants in the city. Here you can find mante or Chinese dumplings, Russian-style tomatoes in vinegar, and Iranian rice pilaf.
Here it is.
A supreme dish.
That's right.
So this is the supreme dish, plav. What's in it?
It's made with 5 ingredients. The first is the meat, then the onions. The third is carrots. Of course, with oil and spices, which is called zervat. And when it's almost done cooking, you add the rice and then water.
Oh, a little water.
That's it. Here we say that plav was created by Timur for his soldiers, because it's a very solid meal. When you eat a dish of plav, it will keep you going, working, etc. for the whole day without any problem. Please go ahead and try it.
Oh, I'm waiting for you. Ladies first.
Well, here it's always...
The men first?
No, the guests. That's how we do it here. You're the guests.
Thank you.
I'll take just a little to try it. I love plav.
Oh, it's very good.
It's not bad. I always serve this to a man before he gets married.
Is that right? Horse tongue. It fortifies you for the wedding.
Exactly.
What about for travelers?
For travelers too.
So this will keep me strong during the trip.
Yes.
How often do Uzbeks eat plov? How many times a week?
Once a week on Thursday, the wife makes a dish of plov, and afterwards you have to make love. That's the rule.
Really? So you cook plov, you eat it, and then you make love? Okay. The Fergana Valley runs east to west, and it was once the only crossing point between the Persian Empire and the Chinese Empire. Occupied by the Chinese, then by the Arab Muslim armies after their victory in the Battle of Talas in 751, the Fergana Valley has always served as a link between the East and the Far East. The valley is an intermountain plateau that is virtually 200 kilometers wide. The Chinese believe that the fabulous blood-sweating horses that were so vital to the emperor's armies came from here. I'm Alfred, and you?
Alfred. Rosa.
Goodbye, Rosa. Thank you. Have a good trip. Goodbye, everyone. We've reached the Fergana Valley. This really is the epicenter of the Silk Road, halfway between Turkey and the other end of China. Historically, this area has served as a buffer zone. At one point, the Chinese Empire agreed never to go further west than this valley, and the Arabs agreed never to go further east. Look, that Chinese bus there is completely related to our subject. It says Marco Polo, Fergana. So why is this valley so critical to the history of the Silk Road? Because it's the only passage between East and West. Here we come to the edge of the world known to the Greeks. Alexander the Great's last fortress is behind us. To the south are the Pamir Mountains, at over 7,000 meters high, which become the Hindu Kush and the Himalayas. To the north, there's the Tian Shan Range, the mountains of the sky. And so all the invaders and all the merchants had to come through here. Kashgar is only 800 kilometers away, and we're starting to see the Chinese influence. In the Fergana Valley, there's an ancient tradition that continues to thrive, the traditional storytellers and puppeteers who perform on the outskirts of fairs. The shows nowadays are mainly for children. Mariam, nice to meet you. Is puppetry an old Uzbek tradition, or is it instead a tradition that developed along the Silk Road and moved from caravanserai to caravanserai?
Puppet theatre has existed in Uzbekistan since ancient times. We had puppeteers who performed in the streets, in palaces, for the elite. They used puppets to tell stories and portray the events and adventures that took place in the caravanserais all along the very long Silk Road. Our children today are also learning the same traditional art of puppet theatre.
Is the type of theatre you do closer to the shadow puppetry of the Chinese, or more influenced by Turkish and Iranian traditions?
In our country, puppet theatre has developed around 3 techniques. We have handheld puppets, puppets with strings, and shadow theatre puppets, in which the shadows of the characters are projected onto a screen. Our traditional theatre is a combination of all of these genres.
Do you regard puppet theatre as an art that is mainly entertainment for children? Or is it a way of teaching philosophical tales, morals, a way of educating people?
Every puppet show has a purpose and seeks to shape the way children see things, to help them develop an understanding of life and provide them with a worldview. The children don't necessarily understand the words or sentences, but when they see live performances with characters and puppets, it remains in their memory. And in that way, the shows are able to reach the children and achieve their purpose.
Fergana has a 1,000-year-old tradition of pottery making. The clay in the area is of very good quality, and very early on, the potters and ceramicists inherited the techniques developed by the Chinese. The workshops are owned by families who have passed on the secrets of their craft from father to son for generations and exhibit their creations in the courtyard. There's a very zen atmosphere in this garden. They're very focused on their work. But there's a sense of serenity. It's a labor of patience and precision. Bakhtiar Akhmetov's workshop also serves as a school for the young people in the area who hope to make a living from pottery. The apprentices study for free with the master potter, and in turn, their work belongs to him.
Among the generations of the past, there were many craftsmen. But then under the Soviet Union, things became difficult, and we could no longer earn a living making pottery. So people in my family gave it up and went off to study or to invest in other fields in order to make a living. But some of my uncles stayed in this profession, and I too continued to work with them, and now my son has joined them, which makes me very happy.
Bakhtiar's workshop and school produces very beautiful things, even garden gnomes. And it just goes to show that the impact of the West has reached even the remotest corners of Asia. Hello. How are you? Good, thank you. So this is the French classroom, since in the pottery workshop, which is also a pottery school, there's also a French language school. It's summer right now, so the teachers are gone, but the children like it so much they come to practice on their own, which is very sweet. What's your name?
My name is Azadeh.
Hello, Azadeh. How old are you?
I'm 14.
14. Hello, what's your name?
My name is Nazeh.
Nazeh. And how old are you?
I'm 13.
13. This class was started by Bakhtiar, who's the master potter, the head of the school, and who also loves French. So he's combined these passions. For example, on this dish, he's painted the actor Louis de Funès. Or on this one, that's on the teacher's desk, on a traditional Uzbek dish, we have the actor Jean Marais. Can you read what's written there? Language that is careless never inspires respect. Very good. I understand your second love is French literature. Where does your interest in Alexandre Dumas come from?
Under the Soviet regime, we watched a lot of French movies. When I was in 4th grade school, I read Alexandre Dumas' novel, The Three Musketeers, and it made a big impression on me. So I decided to read other books written by the same authors, such as The Count of Monte Cristo. That's how I became interested in French literature. I began to read novels not only by Dumas, but also by Victor Hugo, Guy de Maupassant, Honoré de Balzac, Prosper Mérimée. Then I passed my love of France on to my students by watching movies together with them. And so the children started to take an interest in France. It was actually the children who had the idea of starting the French class. I did my part to support the project in any way I could. The students have been taking French lessons for 3 months now, and everything is going well. We're hoping the results will be good. At the moment, we have a teacher who teaches full-time, and he gives the children their French lessons. We hope that some of our more talented students will perhaps go on to study at the Sorbonne one day.
Спасибо большое.
I've now been following in the footsteps of Marco Polo for many thousands of kilometers along this legendary road that gets its name from its flagship commodity, silk. We've seen silk fabrics in many different forms and in a variety of colors. But here in Fergana, we're finally going to see how the Chinese actually invented silk making more than 4,000 years ago.
Assalamu alaikum.
In the shade of the mulberry trees that feed the bombyx mori, or silkworms, this factory in Marguilan handles the entire process of production in the traditional way, from sorting the cocoons to weaving the fabric. These two women are sisters-in-law. They are experts in spinning the cocoons of the bombyx. The Chinese always tried to keep silk making a jealously guarded secret to the point that they didn't allow the cocoons or the silk making techniques to be taken out of the country. The legend in this region, which probably has some historical truth to it, is that around 2,000 years ago, a Chinese princess was given in marriage to a Khan, the king of this region of Fergana. The princess felt very sad about leaving her native land without being able to bring what she liked doing best with her, which was weaving silk. She thus decided to defy her father, the emperor, and she concealed some very special cocoons in her hair bun, cocoons that contained silkworms. We can see the tiny little embryos, which are the larvae of future silkworms. This is what she hid in her hair. And of course, the emperor's soldiers didn't dare search her, and especially not her hair. So she arrived in Fergana, here in this valley, and she found a couple of mulberry trees. She put the larvae in the trees and let them grow. Each one of these larvae can produce 2,000 to 3,000 more larvae within a year. So a few years later, there were silkworms and cocoons, and they began to spin the silk. The cocoon's fibers are made from the dried saliva of the Lepidopteran silkworm caterpillar. The filaments, which are surprisingly strong and can measure more than 1,000 meters in length, are spun to make the silk itself. After they are dyed, the strands of silk are ready to be used here on the traditional looms of these weavers. The threads of raw silk have to be regularly moistened and combed in order to keep them supple. On summer evenings, when it finally begins to cool down, the people of the Enchanted Valley come together at the village fairs. The last glow of twilight falls upon Fergana, the valley that is the true birthplace of the Silk Road. There's something both charming, as well as a little archaic, about these young performers who take so many risks in order to entertain the crowd. As I stop in these Uzbek towns nestled in the mountains deep in the Asian heartland, I often get the feeling that I'm going back in time. Although the caravaneers have all but disappeared on the Silk Road, the troubadours and acrobats who entertain them are still here. It wouldn't be hard to imagine the silhouette of Marco Polo slipping in between all of these colourful figures to admire the performers before heading out once again onto the road, leading to the high mountains of Kyrgyzstan.